In terms of how China has contributed to dam project, actually China is a major country when it comes to global resurgence of dam building, because it alone has more than the half of 80,000 world major dams, basically in terms of domestic dam construction. And that expertise has allowed it to export dam constructions and financing beyond China. That include Africa, as you'll see later on. So given the time limit, I will not be going over all that, but it's interesting to see this table because this one basically summarizes Chinese financing of dams in Africa. This is a research that look at China's finance and construction of dam project in Africa between 2000 and 2013. And as we will see here, that includes the Ghana project, the Bui Dam project in Ghana, which was financed by Exim Bank of China and constructed by Sino Hydro. It also includes the Sudan dam, the Marwe Dam, basically, which was also financed by Exim Bank of China and constructed by, in part, by Sino Hydro. This is a recent table. It looks specifically at Exim Bank finance mega project in Africa between 2000 again and 2019. So this one is more recent, and as we can see here, Exim Bank has been a major financer of dam project in Africa. In terms of theorizing, again, we'll not be spending much time on this, but it's important to note that the structure of political power, basically the regime type, has a major impact in terms of the way projects are implemented, especially mega infrastructure project has mega dam. Whether a regime is a democratic or a non-democratic really matters, because the way the structure of political power basically impact the way the regime engages or the state engages with both dam affected communities, but also the overall anti-dam activists. We'll see that later on. In terms of the state capacity, basically it's multidimensional, but we are interested in three dimensions, which is the administrative capacity through which a government is able, or a state is able, to implement its policies, to conceive policy first and then implement them. The coercive capacity, which is the ability to maintain order, sometimes over the use of military force. And then the extractive capacity, the way a state is able to mobilize resources in order to finance its activities. But again, it should be noted that those three dimensions are deeply intertwined, as we can see in this picture. In terms of the overall theoretical framework, again, we are not spending much of the time here, but we can see that a democracy, in terms of regime type, under a democratic regime, it makes more use of the administrative capacity through which it's able to engage dam affected communities, but also those who are opposed to dam, because in democracy, we know that there are, elections, and each party is basically trying to win not only legitimacy, but also the vote in the next election round. So the government is basically reluctant to use brutal force, at least domestically, and it seeks more to legitimize its engagement or the project it wants to undertake. While in non-democratic, like Sudan, coercion is basically the law of the land, because any contestation against a project, an infrastructure project, is basically viewed as a challenge to the regime, and in response, the regime or the political leaders would like to impose that through, if necessary, the use of military force, which we saw in the case of Sudan. Again, in terms of mechanism, we see that in the democratic settings, there is a strong state-society synergy, And in terms of policy making, there is a bottom-up and top-down mechanism. While in non-democratic, it's more top-down. There is also the centralization of decision-making, which is similar to the Chinese, to the situation in China. State also controls most of decision-making and as well as the resources. So that distinction is important because, again, the way the decisions are made in terms of deciding where to implement dam project and whether to include or engage both community, like affected communities and those who are opposed the construction of the dam, including for environmental reasons or social economic reasons. So going to the specific case of Bui and Marwe Dam, basically the contestation of that emerging future, again, as I was saying, the two governments basically promoted the project as a way of developing their countries, not only development and progress, but also the way of modernizing them, basically. And the promise was that by undertaking the project, people who are living around them would, benefit from it, but also the whole country in terms of, employment, job creations. In short, it will contribute to the betterment of the way of living, their well-being. But the truth of the matter is that the reality basically was in sharp contrast, because after displacement, those people were not able to benefit either from compensation as promised, or even to be part of the discussion in terms of, okay, this is the way we would like to be resettled. And we see it, the contestation in both Bui and Marwe Dam project. When we go to the Marwe Dam, we see that it was actually, there were deadly conflict in the sense that, the affected communities were opposed to the forceful resettlement, and the Sudanese government under the former president al-Bashir was also had brutally, used brutal force in order to impose the Marwe Dam and its construction. And actually, that issue is still ongoing despite the ongoing civil war, because there are litigations. So the issue is still in the court, both in Sudan and in Germany, and at the African Union level. When we go back to the Bui Dam, there, due to the fact that at least the government, the Ghanaian government, was able to engage impacted communities, there are satisfactions. There are a lot of frustrations on the ground when you speak to the affected communities, but at least they do recognize that they were part of the conversation, which was really not the case in Sudan. And all that shows us that at least people would like to be heard, to contribute to decision makings in a way, or at least to be informed of the project that are being implemented, and that will forever impact their life, because once they lose their possessions, including land, they will not be able to get that back. So the conversation being part of it is something important, and that was mainly lacking in Sudan compared to what we saw in Ghana. Again, this is not to show that or to say that everything is perfect in Ghana, but at least the democratic process has allowed the conversation to take place despite the failures and the frustration, the ongoing frustrations, which was really not the case in Sudan. In terms of quickly, again, summing up, what does all that mean when we talk about development security nexus and China's contribution to development in Africa? It basically means that the discourse of developing or promoting development in Africa through infrastructure project really needs to be questioned. First, because it's not as straightforward as those people will or leaders, both African leaders and Chinese leaders, would like us to believe. Second, it's also important to look at the dynamic on the ground, because at the official level, especially the diplomatic level, there are talking points, while people on the ground are really suffering from the implementation of those projects. But the final point, though, is that African domestic political environment has a major role in determining the impact of China's financing and construction of infrastructure project and in the continent. So basically, these are the main takeaway from my research. Thank you so much.